Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning.
Morning.
I have some questions about complement, but I want to revert quickly to some of the chairman's opening questions on DNA sampling, if we could. Colonel, I was reviewing some of the back and forth between yourself and the Senate Appropriations Committee of last budget cycle, and I believe at that point there was a Senate bill under consideration expanding us from DNA collection of convicted persons to arrested persons, and I believe it was an arrest and a person with 8 misdemeanors also. I believe I have that accurately. Obviously, what we're talking about here is a major expansion in the collection of DNA. I believe you characterize it as a 400% increase in caseload. We have the budget reduction that the chairman has talked about. I guess my question would be this: are we crossing over into a line that's somewhat troublesome in the government reach sense? Obviously, we operate under the presumption of innocent until proven guilty, and I'm wondering if we get into this area of collecting DNA for people who are arrested, not convicted, will this result in significant lawsuits against PSP to try to protect that civil liberty, if you will? Could you share with us your thoughts on that?
Yes. There's two parts to that. As far as civil liberties, I don't view it as an issue there, because it's just like fingerprints. When you're arrested, your fingerprints are also submitted because you were arrested. And those have been maintained and there's over 100 million fingerprint records that we have. So I really don't see too much difference between that and DNA. My problem, in the area that I am concerned about, is that that's such a big increase to our workload, and we already have such a big delay in some of this. And there's two different things. The submissions of the convictions right now, convicted felons, we take their DNA. Our backlog on that is under 30 days and closer to 15 days, so that's not too bad. And that's how we have this big database that we can check it against. But if we get a 400% increase in submissions into this area, we're not equipped at this present time to deal with that without having additional, maybe dramatic delays. And that was unfortunately the case a year or so ago when there was a homicide in Philadelphia where women were strangled, and it took such a long time to process that the subject wasn't caught as in the quickest manner that we would have hoped for, because it took so long to process. I would not want to see us in that situation again, where we're maybe 6 months to a year behind in this type of work, because you just never know what's going to happen. So that is my major concern, is that I don't know that we can deal with the increased workload unless we have a new building and more examiners.
I appreciate that, and that would be a position you would take that I would expect. Obviously, I think there is a broader concern for the General Assembly and the administration to deal with on how much cataloging and listing of people within government computers do we want to do, potentially innocent parties, and retaining that data on into the future. So it's a concern. I'd like to shift over to the status of barracks within the system. I have the pleasure of having the Ephrata Barracks in my home area, and so it falls to me to raise this issue. Clearly, we recognize the challenges that you have from a complement standpoint and budgetarily. The other side of that, for those in some of our areas, and I've read down the list of barracks that may be on the bubble, shall we say, response times out in the communities is the other side of that equation. I'm wondering, could you share with me what criteria you will be using to evaluate the barracks for closure potentially? Certainly.
I have not reached any decisions yet towards any particular stations. However, there are some other things that we're doing to see if we can reduce administrative type responsibilities so we can have more troopers on the road, which is our #1 responsibility. But we look at incidents. That is the main, and response time, and how close would the station would be to where it would be relocated, which would generally be the troop headquarters? How far a distance? If we're relocating a station, 60 miles, that's one thing. If it's 15 miles, that's another. We take all of those things into consideration, and it's something we're going to give a great deal of study to. But I would anticipate that as we reach the levels that by the June of 2013, and our complement goes down, that we will be looking at some sort of station consolidations or station closings.
How much does, and I realize, incidents would be part of that, and then we talk about the blue line, just the presence of policing within the community. Is that another part that you work into this? How often are people seeing a trooper car go by their business or their home?
Well, one thing I've found is that people really like having that station in their locality. I mean, it's an important piece of the identity of the community. I understand that presence there is something they expect, and it's not something that I do lightly. However, I've got to do something, and this might be a process. I mean, we haven't closed the station in over 10 years, and that's where I'm looking down the line. I do consider, and I do intend to work with the representatives and the senators from the areas in which stations are being considered closed, so that we can everybody will be part of that discussion. But I don't want to be insincere that I think that might happen down the road, because it just seems we have to do something. That's one of the things I think we can do.
I appreciate the challenge that you have. One last quick question, if I may. There was a staffing experiment attempted at the Skippack Barracks down in Montgomery County some years ago, and I'm wondering if you can share with us how that worked out, and if you want to elaborate for the benefit of all here, that'd be appreciated.
Okay. All right, Colonel Bivens.
There have been efforts over the past number of years to look at either station consolidation or going dark, and that's going dark was what was attempted at the Skippack station several years back. There was a lot of resistance and opposition to that, and ultimately the decision was reversed, and the station is now open 24 hours a day. But those decisions are what kind of led to some of the other decisions that we've had to make. For example, the closing of the central dispatch centers that we have. Where we find ourselves is that our staffing levels are down. We're projecting at least 465, and candidly, we'll probably go lower than that, just based on the retirements that we're seeing right now. So with the CDCs, the premise behind the CDCs was we would save people by doing central dispatching and then either both consolidating stations down from 81 down to 55, and also with going dark at some of those remaining 55 stations. So we'd save people and have more troopers out on the road. We were not able to accomplish either of those because of the resistance that we experienced. Therefore, we were staffing not only those stations 24 hours a day, but also the central dispatch centers as well. So that's why we arrived at that decision. Now what we're faced with is, we're pushing those people back out to the field so that we can free up troopers and get them off of desk duties, put them back out doing the law enforcement function that they're trained to do. But to the Colonel's point about looking at the consolidations, we've got to do something. Every station has an administrative overhead that we have to maintain, and by consolidating, we can save a number of positions. We save the station commander, property room people, staff functions, dispatchers. So there are a lot of things that go into it, and we would be looking at consolidating stations that are in close proximity to others. Sorry, kind of a long-winded response, but those are some of the things that we've looked at based on the Skippack experience and some of the mistakes that were made and some of the resistance that was encountered there.
I appreciate the challenge of the public reaction to that. Colonel, thank you and all for the responses, and thank you especially for the open door offer to work with those of us who are elected on these issues.
You bet.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.